When you lose everything, you have nothing but your faith. That's it. You have your faith, your skills, your grit, your integrity. Going from nothing to 3 years later, starting a business that would be a multi-million-dollar business and really transforming my life.
The problems never go away. The world never gets better, so to speak, if you're not living in the now. It's a journey that doesn't end.
Who would you be if you lost everything? You're alone in the woods, you have nothing, no family, nothing. Who are you?
I feel like a new religion will start, and that God will be an AI. They will worship that.
I came out of a very specific form of AI where myself and my co-founders, we did the largest deployment of computer vision AI that had ever been done in the United States. We did something no one else had done.
Wow.
Do you feel that way for .ai, which is your newest venture?
It kind of begins with,
Are you looking for actionable insights from the world's most inspiring individuals? The Built by Love podcast is on a mission to transform your life, your business, and your health. Tune in for impactful conversations with people who do business differently. Avoid burnout, acquire freedom, and live life fully on your own terms. With me, Pete Daly-Dickson, alongside Daniel Bussius.
Susan Sly, thank you for being on the Built by Love podcast. It's an absolute honor to have you on. We like to start the episode with a personal story. It could be a professional story as well, where you've had an incredible challenge in life and you weren't even quite sure how you were going to get out of it. And maybe even it changed your life or transformed your life and became a pivotal point that has moved you forward. I know personally you've had a wild ride. So can you share a story with our listeners to start off the podcast?
absolutely. And Daniel, it's so good to catch up with an old friend. So the year is 2000, and we were all worried in 1999 about Y2K. Some of the listeners will remember Y2K, and everything was going to crash. And I knew that, forget technology, that I was personally crashing. And at that time, I was a professional Ironman distance triathlete. I was training 40 hours a week. I was running a health club. I had a team of 55 people who worked for me. I was on radio, television, writing articles for big magazines like Oxygen. And I started to drop things and I started to slur my speech and I was having difficulty focusing. And I went to my doctor, and my doctor was also my client. And I said, Ross, listen, I'm not feeling well. And I explained my symptoms and he said, oh, it's just stress. So Daniel, he said, go on a vacation. So I went on a vacation and I went to Jamaica and I literally slept every day. Here's this beautiful island, all of the goodness. And I'm a scuba diver and I'm sleeping. And I come back and I take a pink Post-it into his office. And I said, Ross, I want an MRI. I want blood work. These are the tests. And I said, you come to me when you need different running shoes or an eating plan or a workout plan. I said, I'm coming to you now. And he ordered the test for me and he's like, it's not a big deal. And on January 13th, Daniel, of 2000, he calls me in his office and he shows me a scan and it's like a fishbowl full of fish and it's my brain. And he said, Susan, these are lesions. And I have looked at these, the neurologist has looked at these, and this was a teaching hospital in Canada, so very well accredited. And he said, you have multiple sclerosis. And on top of it, you have the worst kind. It's progressive. And he said, with this kind of case, in 10 years, you will be in a wheelchair. And in 20 years, you will be dead. Oh, I was 27 years old. And my daughter was 2, almost 3. And I went home. And I started searching on the internet, and the listeners will remember the internet dial-up in those days was like riding a lawnmower, like, and I'm searching this. And while I was searching, a chat pop-up comes up and it says, hey, baby. And I'm like, what the heck? And I click on it, and it was a chat log of my then husband's extracurricular activities. And he was in a lot of different chat rooms, having online extracurricular activities. We'll keep it PG. And I was devastated. And 16 weeks later, on Good Friday, I go into my health club to teach a spinning class, and there's a padlock on the door, and there are all my students around me. And we'd been shut down for failure to pay taxes. And I had buried my head in the sand. I was the marketing girl, I was the teaching girl, I was the face of the company, but I wasn't paying attention to the finances. And my partner, who was also my husband, I was letting him run that show. And within 16 weeks, I get diagnosed with MS, go through a divorce, become a single mom, locked out of all my bank accounts, and end up on my brother-in-law's sofa with nowhere to go. And I would say that that moment didn't define me, but it refined me. Because when I came out of it, and we're going to talk about this, going from nothing to 3 years later, starting a business that would be a multi-million-dollar business and really transforming my life, it was that breakdown that was required because I was living a life that was out of integrity. It was a mirage, and it was the breakdown required to hit the breakthrough.
Wow.
That's incredible. First, I am so sorry for those experiences. I know, though, it's made you the woman that you are, but still, I feel for you. What was that like? When people hit their lowest points, different things come out. They'll be mad at God. They'll be mad at other things. You were faced with not only the death of the life you had, but potentially the death of yourself. So what was running through your head? I mean, for your daughter, for your loved ones, for everything. Could you share a glimpse of that?
You and I, Daniel, our faith is really strong. We love God. We don't just say it, we walk it, we believe it. So I'm very blessed because before all of the loss happened, it was after the diagnosis, and a friend of mine, I didn't tell my coach, my sponsors, that I was sick. And one of my fellow athletes said to me, he's like, Susan, you define yourself by, you own this company, you drive a Mercedes, and you're on television, your radio. And it was very superficial. And we're all entrepreneurs. And I'm going to call out some of the people listening right now and just be very raw and real and blunt. You're defining yourself by your Urus, by your bank account. You're the people who go for dinner in LA and you pick up the tab that's $4,000 for a group of four, and table service and all of it. No one cares, because I am proof positive that can all end in 16 weeks. So what he said to me was, he said, Susan, who would you be if you lost everything? And literally his words, you're alone in the woods, you're naked, you have nothing, no family, nothing. Who are you? And so, Daniel, that question jarred me. And I went out on my racing bike and I just kept riding and riding and riding. And it was one of those days in Canada where fortunately the roads were clear. There was still snow on the sides. And I kept going, God, who am I? Who am I? And it was just like this little, still small voice that said, you're a teacher. And I didn't know what that meant. But when everything happened and it was so public, the breakup of my marriage was written about on the front page of the newspaper. People were talking about me. It was awful. I got down on my knees and I prayed to God, and I'm like, God, I know I'm a teacher and I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life empowering people, specifically women, but how am I supposed to empower someone unless I come out of this? And I say, God, even though I'm tired, even though I'm sick, I'm dropping things, I'm numbness and tingling, and I can't even shower because the water could be so hot, I wouldn't even feel it. The left side of my body would go numb. I say, God, if you show me the way, I'll do the work. I don't care how tired I am. And very fortunately, my brother-in-law, he got me a job interview for Bally Total Fitness in Toronto. And back in those days, Bally's was the biggest thing. Some of you will remember like the ripped, sweaty abs and everything. And I go in there to interview for a management position. And Daniel, this was crazy because my references were like the biggest rock band in Canada, the Tragically Hip. They were my clients. I used to prep them for tours. So I had the Tragically Hip, Kirk Muller. He was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens when they won the cup. He was one of my references. And they go, oh my gosh, you have these references. Now, keep in mind, I'm going for a job interview, single mom, living on my brother-in-law's sofa, and I still don't have a place to live. So I get the job, and the person whose job I'm taking is doing a lateral move. And this is how important faith is, because when you lose everything, right, you have nothing but your faith. That's it. You have your faith, your skills, your grit, your integrity. And those are the four. That's all you got. And so Amy was her name. She said, Susan, listen, I know you're going through a really hard time. I'm going to give you my apartment with all of the furniture in it, and you do not have to pay me for 2 pay cycles. And Daniel, that apartment was literally across the street from the health club in the same building as my brother-in-law. So I had babysitting, I could walk to work, and that's how I got back on my feet. And it was candidly that, I'm not afraid to lose. When someone's lost everything, you're not afraid to do it again. Right?
Yeah.
Like, because you know what it's like. And it's like if you go skydiving or you go diving with sharks or you do anything, once you've done it once, you're kind of like, okay, it would suck if it happened again, but I know what the signs are that, relate to that downfall, but I know I can come back.
How did you overcome the multiple sclerosis? Because that's normally a progressive terminal diagnosis, and you're beyond the time, the expiration date that the doctors gave you. So, which is amazing, obviously. But what did you do specifically to kind of reverse that?
Or Peter, am I really an AI that right?
Well, it's all a simulation, isn't it?
Yeah, not real. It's really interesting you should mention that, because I had a philosophy, and I still do to this day: if the body can turn something on, it can turn it off. Yeah. And in the course of my journey and in the last, 15, 20 years, I've had the privilege of spending time with Wayne Dyer before he died, Louise Hay. Louise Hay always said the body disease is literally an emotional imbalance in the body. So I looked at it like a scientist would. And I said, okay, if my body turned this on, how can I manage it? How can I reverse engineer it? So I went back to school and I studied homeopathic medicine. And then I started to study Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. I started to read books about diet and what people were doing to navigate the disease. And I wasn't focused on reversing at the moment. I was focused more on how do we suspend the progression, because it was progressing. And so that's what I started to do. And to this day, even on my own show, I've had biohackers like Dave Asprey's been on my show, and all these different people that I follow and I pay attention to. So I do a lot of things. I do ozone therapy. I eat a very clean diet. Every morning I pray for an hour. I don't look at screens. I really make sure that I pay attention to what my body is whispering to me, because if I don't, then my body will eventually scream. And that's the message I have for everyone. One of my best friends died of cancer, and he was an entrepreneur, and he said, Susan, I gave myself cancer. Mm. And by the time he was diagnosed, he had ignored all of the signs, and he was given 90 days to live, and he left 2 little kids. And so that's what I did, Peter. And so I know when I'm getting the least bit sort of out of balance, even as an entrepreneur, I don't put in the 16-hour days. I don't go, I'll sleep when I'm dead anymore. I used to say that stuff until I got sick. Now I do all acupuncture, as I said, blood ozone therapy. I take about 30 to 40 supplements a day. I make sure I get regular massages, all of it. And I don't push myself, because if I'm pushing myself, it means I'm not optimizing my time, and that's on me.
So many insights, so much wisdom there just in that. We could end the episode now and it would be worth it. Incredible. So inspiring as well, because, it's very easy to get caught up in, I'm not feeling too good and whatever. But the inspiration that you've given us and the listener there is that basically what I heard is that it's in the mind, really. And if you can slow and reverse multiple sclerosis, then it kind of puts a lot of other stuff into perspective.
And Peter, and that point is, I was slurring my speech. I was dropping things. I mean, in 2003, I was flaring up every 2 weeks. And I want to share a story because
Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but continue to be held back by marketing that fails to bring in new customers? It's time to stop settling for lackluster results, wasting your time and money, and focus on a proven formula for business growth. At Built by Love, we're more than a marketing agency. We're your growth partner. As a multiple-time award-winning agency, we specialize in creating marketing strategies that aren't just effective, they're transformative. Here's what we do. 1. Grow your revenue. Our proven systems drive meaningful, measurable results. 2. Elevate your brand. Our strategies will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. 3. We save you time and money. Our award-winning team will handle your advertising and marketing with precision and expertise so you can focus on what you do best. Don't just take our word for it. Experience the difference for yourself. Book your free consultation today at builtbylove.com.
Some of the people listening, and especially as entrepreneurs, we're drivers. We never want to ask for help because it's weakness. So when I was working for Bally's, I had sales quotas, and there were 444 clubs globally at the time. And my club was one of the premier clubs, but my sales dollars would be converted to US dollars. And the dollar back then was similar to what it is now, but it was about 62, 63 cents on the dollar. So imagine I had to make $1.38 for every $1 my American fellow managers would make. And so I remember there was a guy who was head of another club, and we became friends, and his name was Rick. And Rick also had MS. And I remember I was closing out the end of the month, and Rick had already made his quota, and he jumped on the subway. I will never forget this. His name is Rick Mueller. So shouts out to you, Rick. He jumps on the subway. He comes up many, many stops to my club. I am sitting in my office. My arm is numb. I'm slurring. I can't speak to people because they think I'm drunk. And he helped me close out my month that month, even though he had MS as well, the same kind as me.
Wow.
And that heart of service, right? And it's so profound because as entrepreneurs, when we think we have all the answers, when we think we're the only one who can do something, my gosh, we're limiting our teams, we're limiting our companies. And I think one of the biggest things for me from that was it took a long time, but I learned to ask for help. And that is, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a founder, that isn't weakness, that's strength. And even the companies I invest in my portfolio, I won't even look at a company where there's one founder with no co-founder and there's so much ego. Like I just, because I know what's going to happen. There's going to be destruction at some point.
Wow. Yeah.
We've had podcast guests like James Lawrence, Iron Cowboy. That's, he did the 50-50-50. He's had Netflix documentaries about him. And one of the interesting things is when we were talking to him was, how do you balance that level of training and then your business side of your life and your family side? And you're like the female version of James Lawrence. And I'm not trying to compare you two, but, Ironman athlete, marathon runner. I believe your accomplishments are the top 10 in the pro division, right? So you're not just running you weren't just running Ironmans just for fun. You were professionally competing. What was that like with also having a family and a business? So how did you balance that? And then if you'll allow me to add to a second point to the question is, do you still carry that same balance, or have you shifted in how you manage your time today versus back then?
Oh, back then I wasn't in balance. That's why I gave myself MS, right? And that Ironman, That was a crazy Ironman. So the story goes like this. I'm diagnosed with MS and I'm like, oh my gosh, there Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, The Four Stages of Death and Dying. I had studied that in university and I went through all of them. And then my thought was, I haven't done the Boston Marathon yet. That's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm going to be in a wheelchair. And the interesting thing was, Daniel, God has a sense of humor, right? So remember, I don't tell my coach, I don't tell my sponsors that I'm sick, and I'm supposed to do Ironman Florida. So I get diagnosed in January. Ironman Florida is in September, and I'm on a training ride, and suddenly I have to get off my bike. I have this sharp pain in my back, and I couldn't even ride the bike. I'm like, I cannot do Ironman Florida. So I call my agent, Ronnie. I'm like, I need a different race. And he said, well, how long do you need? And I said, let me go to the doctor, check it out, and I'll go to the doctor next week. And in the meantime, I had a half Ironman in Montreal to do as a training race. And so I go to Montreal, and my bike was yellow, bright yellow. And I used to call it Porter Pete. The bike sponsor was Porter. It was a custom bike. So I go in to go do the swim, and I'm ranked super high for this half Ironman. And I come out, and I'm the Porter Pete is the only bike on the women's pro rack. Bright yellow. I'm like, oh man. And I've got this stabbing pain in my back, and I knew I was swimming crooked. The swim is not my thing. So I get on the bike, and I'm like, let's go. I am going hunting. And in those days, I was a predator as an athlete. And I'm like, I'm in last place in the pro women. And so we start. And the bike for the half Ironman is, so in the Ironman, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. So the bike obviously is 66 miles. So I'm like, let's go. And so I start hunting these girls down, one after the next one, the next one, the next one. And then finally I'm in about 10th place, and I get into the run, and I'm like, we're going to drop the hammer now. And I don't care how much pain I'm in, because I knew I had a shelf life on racing. Mm-hmm. I knew that this was probably one of my last half Ironman races, and it was. And so I go hunting, and I'm like pinging them off. And, you're not racing when you're racing pro, you're not racing with AirPods. Like you're in your head and you're in your heart, and you're going and start pinging off the girls. And we were in Quebec, and the girl in front of me was French. And the course wasn't well marked toward the end. So they tell the French girl to go this way, and they tell me to go the other way. And I start running about 10 meters down the road, and I'm like, crap, they lied. Anyway, I end up coming in second, and I collapse, and my coach is there, and my agent is there, and my rib is sticking out of my back.
Oh my goodness.
My rib was subluxed, and I did that whole race. And then when I went to do the Ironman in Malaysia, I knew it would be my last Ironman, and I fell off my bike training, and I had a pelvic fracture. And that's a whole long other story that involves God and faith and just, the power of belief. But I did that whole race with a frozen pelvis, and I finished 8th in the pro division. And it was, Malaysia is a Muslim country. We had to find a female doctor. We had to find lidocaine, then we had to find Marcaine. And there's a whole story of finishing that race. But that was my last race. And then I went on to do 6 post MS as well. I went on to do 6 Boston marathons. I will do 10. The wonderful thing about being in my 50s is that my qualifying time gets slower. So to answer your question, Daniel, that I didn't have balance, and I made myself sick. And now today, even this morning, I was like, okay, I have, a race this weekend, a 10K with my daughter. I didn't feel like running more than 30 minutes, so I didn't. And then I got on the elliptical, and I'm finishing my workout on the elliptical, and I'm listening to personal development, and that's what I'm doing. So I had to learn to listen to my body and not chase things, because if something feels like I'm chasing it, I've worked so hard on myself and my consciousness that that's such low vibrational energy. It never ends up well at all.
I love the fact that you're doing personal development while you're working out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Don't you? Doesn't everyone?
I do, but I thought I was the only one because I've mentioned it before and they're like, don't you listen to music? And I'm like, no, I'm in the zone. I'm doing physical work to improve myself. And then I'm also doing mental. So it's like, it's double effort. It's very much intentional. And then the feedback I've usually got when I brought that up, and I haven't brought it up in years, is like, oh God, no, I could never do that. Like I got to listen to music. And so I appreciate that.
Well, I'll jump in and say this, that in Kabbalah, the belief is that, and I was raised in a Jewish, Buddhist, Christian household, and so in Kabbalah, which I've studied a bit of, they believe that sweating is the release of negativity from the body. So when else would you be as open as when you're sweating? And so I listen to a lot of podcasts, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And then if I'm doing like intervals or something, then I do throw on the music after that. But the first part of any workout is always, always, always personal development. Yeah.
Where do you recognize, Susan, that drive came from, which led to you doing Ironmans and stuff? Because that's like an extreme sport. It's not something that's kind of, you just do for,
it's not
for
pickleball.
shits and giggles, as they say. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've never played pickleball.
What was your upbringing like? You just touched on it very briefly there. Did that contribute to it?
I was always a prover, Peter. And I grew up raised by a single dad who passed last year. His name was Joe. And he was that side of the family were from China originally. So I was raised in a very traditional Asian, play the piano, get straight A's. I remember one day I came home with a B and my dad looks at my whole report card and the B was in phys ed of all things. And he's like, why did you get a B? And I was, I never had a true relationship with my mom. She was a drug addict and, had her own issues, which, she's passed as well and healed I healed that a long time ago. But I was always a prover. And my whole racket in life was I'm not lovable. And so when you feel like you're not lovable and you are a prover, then you will put yourself in situations and attract people to you so that you're always forced to prove yourself. So what better way to prove yourself than an Ironman or a marathon or in business or whatever it is. And even in relationships, attracting the people to you who reinforce whatever that racket is. So that's what I did for years. And so for me, it was, looking back, I have the medals and the trophies and it was fabulous, but it was always about proving. And it really wasn't until I gave myself MS and I started running Boston. I really wanted to run Boston. Boston is the holy grail of marathons. You can't just enter, you've got to qualify. And it wasn't until I started running for the sake of running and loving it. And in French, we say the joie de vivre, the joy of living, that there's just this je ne sais quoi, like this something about it that it's like, I just wanted to do it. And that's how I ended up doing 6 Bostons, is just to run for the sake of loving it. And it was really the first time, because MS was one of many gifts it gave me, was I couldn't push myself that much anymore. I'd end up on the sofa for 3 weeks. So it was like, okay, now I get to do this because I want to. And I'm not even closing myself to another Ironman. My friend Lauren, who's also in her 50s, and she's done many Ironmans, and she was on Discovery Channel's World's Rarest Diseases with something called porphyria. Lauren's like, let's do an Ironman together. I'm like, I'm open. This chapter of my life at 52, I feel like my badassery and, maybe I will. I don't know, but it's just doing it for a different reason. But that's where it came from. And Peter, here's the irony. It wasn't until recently that I did, I've done a ton of personal development. I've shared the stage with Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, Gary Vee, all these different people. I've done these many multi-speaker events, 20,000 people. And it wasn't until recently I decided this year even to put myself myself through the work and I surrendered. And there's a program in LA called MITT, and Lewis Howes is a graduate, Beyonce is a graduate, Lewis Howes' personal coach, Chris Lee, ran the one I just did. And I said, I'm going to surrender and put myself through the work as though I don't know anything.
Wow.
And it was like holding up the mirror and going, oh crap, Susan, you thought you've done all this work, but man, oh man, you're still running these rackets. And so I can't do anything any longer, Peter, to do it because I'm proving myself. The only place I can do it from is authenticity and love. And that has meant I've changed a lot of things in my life too.
You've used the term rackets there a couple of times, and you did before we hit record as well. Just in case the listener, and I know where that comes from, but just for the sake of the listener who perhaps doesn't know what that means, when you say racket, what are you talking about?
You're an entrepreneur and you're busy. But we know that every business owner needs a podcast without the hassle of learning about production. Well, we figured it out for you. Activate Your Podcast is a service that offers everything you need to make a podcast that creates meaningful relationships with your clients at scale. The experts at AYP will work directly with you to produce 5-pillar episodes from a 2-hour conversation that captures the trust and love you are bringing to your ideal client. And the assets are all yours to create your own amazing marketing campaign. For the benefits of a podcast without the hard work, head to activateyourpodcast.com and let's create something great together. Now, back to the episode.
Sure. That's a great question. So there was a lot of work that came out of the 60s in personal development. And that was, I'm trained in both neuro-linguistic programming and natural language processing. So the NLPs, but so the Bandler School really was the neuro-linguistic programming. That was what Tony Robbins trained under. I trained under it. And so there's a lot of work that came out of this period of time, and something that really made manifest, and it was made very popular in landmark training, was this concept of a racket. And a racket is, we can think of it in the simplest form. It's a limiting belief you have about yourself. And when you are in the worst part of your personality, that you run this racket. And your racket could be always being late to prove how important you are. Your racket could be something about money, where it's like, oh, okay, I can never make money. Money, is only for people who are greedy and nasty. Or, maybe your racket is about, you can only get to sleep if you take, 5 marijuana gummies, whatever your racket is. And so we all have our rackets, and we have many. And so until someone really calls you out on them, they will run the show. And while they're running the show, you will never have the peace you deserve, the love you deserve, the money you deserve, and the health you deserve. So of course, I was running all these rackets. And of course, I was unhealthy. Of course, I was in a toxic relationship. Of course, I lost everything and went bankrupt. Of course I did, right? And then when I got rid of those rackets, that was the next layer of rackets. And that was great because it helped me become very successful. But I cannot go for success in the way I used to because I'm no longer running those rackets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've listened to all of the Tony Robbins audiobooks and read all his books. And one of the things he says about that, which is interesting because you've brought it up, is he said is until you overcome that, those stories that you create, you will sabotage yourself. So if you start making money, you will blow it, you will spend it, you will do everything at a subconscious level to take that away from you because for whatever reason that story is you don't deserve it. It's not yours.
Yes, exactly. And a great way for everyone to think about this, if this is resonating for anyone, tag us all on social because Peter, Daniel, myself, we want to hear it. We're here to serve. This is what this show is about. And if this is resonating for you, an easy way to take a look at your rackets is very simply write a list out of everything that's stressing you right now and then categorize them. So, it could be your primary relationship, it could be money, it could be business, kids, whatever. And I can promise you where there is more than one, there is a racket to be found. And that's why, even now with this work with MITT in LA, like my son's going, my co-founder, my new company is going, my head of product is going, because I'm like, why would I have a company where everyone's not sort of vibing at the same level and people are running rackets? It's going to be very destructive. So now what we're saying in our company is, when you rise to a leadership your position, you are going to this training, and it's not negotiable. And an example of this is Lululemon. While Lululemon was really, really growing, every employee had to go, once they reached a certain level, to training and personal development training. And that's why there was this whole Lulu culture of, like, you'd go into the store and then, the salespeople were like, they were almost unoffendable because they knew whatever was going on for you. You didn't like how your cellulite looked in the tights or whatever. It wasn't about them. And that company just went on this massive trajectory. And so I just refuse in my inner circle to have anyone who isn't committed to doing work anymore. It doesn't mean I don't love people. I'm a very loving person. I'm committed to creating an environment of love everywhere I go. But it just means that I no longer have to be holding a racket that says I've got to save everyone, which was another one of mine.
How did that influence? Sorry, no. How did that influence your parenting style?
My parenting style is evolving. My children are, everyone says their children are incredible. One of the things I did, Peter, is that when my children hit the age of 13, I would take them to Unleash the Power Within, Tony's event, and they would walk the fire. So the three oldest ones walk the fire. Now the youngest is 15, and Tony stopped doing that event live during the pandemic, so she didn't walk the fire. So because if you look at where I was inspired by that, if you look at many cultures, so in Judaism as an example, when a boy gets a bar mitzvah, a girl gets a bat mitzvah, and in many cultures there's this rite of passage for children into young adulthood. And in the North American culture, we don't have that. In Native American culture, they have it. In so many beautiful cultures around the world. And I kept saying, well, what am I going to do for my children? Because my son is neurodivergent. And, I'm like, what is it going to be for him? What is going to be his rite of passage? And so that's what I decided to do, is take them all to do this work. And they're very self-aware. I mean, even my 19-year-old, for her Christmas list, she wanted Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. She wanted Louise Hay's book, Heal Your Life. And it's really amazing. And so one of the things I tell my kids is, I'm evolving as your mother, and I'm not the same person I was even this time last year. And it's okay to call me out on stuff, because I'm always going to be the one to call you out on stuff in love, so you can live your best life. So that's how it's impacted my parenting style. And, for the entrepreneurs listening as parents, you can be grinding it out 16 hours a day. Your kids are going to find love from somewhere else. And I was listening to a podcast, especially about daughters and their fathers. If, you're the guy who yells at home, chances are there's a good chance your daughter's going to go looking for love in all the wrong places, as the song would go. And so we really want to think deeply about what we're doing as parents, and your business is never as important as creating those rites of passage and that time and those experiences. So it isn't easy, believe me, you have to carve it out, but it definitely has influenced both my parenting style and my leadership style in my company.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say then you keep tight boundaries around your personal and professional schedule? Like, you won't make excuses, or do you in certain circumstances where you'll work late or work the weekends? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs will make those excuses, and there's always an excuse for the next time that you got to do that and take away from missing soccer practice or the game or whatever the family time is.
Yeah, the kids' events are non-negotiable. And I thank God, for my son, because I became the cross country coach for his school, and all the boys on my team, they were all, on the spectrum, and man, I learned a lot from them. But even recently I was super out of balance. And so I'm in the middle of moving, I'm renovating a house. As I share now, I'm saying, going through a separation. And, I know we love to listen to podcasts and have the guests just be these iconic figures of perfection. I don't believe in perfection. Sometimes it's really messy. And I'm building a new company, and I get asked to speak a lot, especially, here in the Phoenix area. And, just all the stuff that's going on. And I was so out of balance. And I'm like, I'm not making the money I used to. I'm not I'm not achieving at the level I was achieving at. And I'm going 7 days a week. Like, we're still, prioritizing God on Sundays, but then it was like it was almost becoming like church was an inconvenience. And so I said, nope, enough. And my co-founder, God bless her, will go 7 days a week and just go, go, go. And I just said to her, I said, I'm not going to meet. I'm not, doing calls. And she texted me, she's like, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm better than okay. And I went to church. Like we did church. I went for a 2-hour massage. I cooked dinner for the kids, but I realized, for the last 90 days, I was so out of balance because we're raising a seed round of funding. So I've got a lot of VCs in play. They're building a company, building a tech, dealing with tech debt, all of the stuff that goes on. And I advise a couple of startups as well in the AI space. And I was like, man, I'm out of balance. And I think one piece of advice I want to give to everyone right now is, when I wrote the book, Have It All Women, many, many years ago, one of the things I said about balance is it's really your own definition. Because if you're looking at Peter's definition, Daniel's definition, my definition, it's not going to align with your life. So you've got to define it for yourself. And so I pulled back and I went, okay, what is my definition of balance? The other thing I did that you're both going to laugh is, so I'm super nerdy. So one of my custom GPTs, the prompts that I gave it behaves like a Christian Tony Robbins.
That's amazing.
I'm not even kidding.
I love that.
So I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaches, on personal development. And I said, no, I'm going to create my own. And for the coaches listening, I've been saying this publicly, coaches and influencers and therapists are going to be replaced by AI. AI is the first technology that is training humans. It's the first. Mm-hmm. So I created this GPT, and it is so good. It actually made me cry. And at night, it gives me journaling exercises. I put my goals into it. I said, these are the 3 goals. I said, I'm going through a painful separation. It reads scripture to me, and I'll say, hey, Susan, here's the scripture you need. And it is so good. And so I created safeguards to put myself back into balance, because I knew I was getting out of balance. And if I get out of balance, the consequences are I will get really sick. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
And that really speaks also to the fact that this thing is not, well, everything that we're talking about on this show, it's not a one and done thing. It's like it is the thing. It's like it's constant. It's ever evolving. We're changing. And if you take your eye off the ball, you will find yourself out of balance, out of harmony, out of sync with whatever's important.
Yeah, it's so easy, Peter, to look at technology and what's going on, for AI as an example, because I came out of a very specific form of AI where myself and my co-founders, we did the largest deployment of computer vision AI that had ever been done in the United States. We did something no one else had done. And, when I look at what's happening with AI, or Sam Altman now is declaring he's going to start his own social network, and the stuff that's going on with Mars, and there's a whole list of things that, I know about. Some of them I can talk about, some of them I can't, that, it's very easy to get caught up in that adrenaline rush. Like, I have to stay up all the time, and I have to grind, and I have to do this because something's going to happen. And the moment you start to think that something like the FOMO, then something will happen. Your wife will ask for a divorce, or you'll find a nodule on your lung, or there'll be something that will happen because that's what's going on in the back of your mind. Mm-hmm. And I want everyone to know, yes, the AI race is on, and yes, technology is evolving faster than I would never write someone said, why don't you write a book on AI? I said, because by the time I write page 1, it's obsolete. Why would I? And no offense, many of my girlfriends have, and I love them, and I read their books, and I think it's fantastic. But that's how fast the pace is evolving. So, you're not going to be able to keep up. So surrender to that fact, and just focus on what it is you want to create for the right reasons, and it's going to be much better.
I love the fact that you said surrender. One of the things in my own journey of being an entrepreneur and going through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship is that you get caught up into the conference culture. You're going to the conferences, you're in associations, you're speaking with other entrepreneurs, and you're getting inspiration. And everyone has, especially on the conference circuit, that hack, that thing that just they've reached perfection. Their life is perfect. And so all of a sudden you drive to that thing and you, whatever that goal is for you, and you miss the whole point in life, which the journey is the destination. If you get to that destination, you're going to find that maybe one problem has disappeared, but you've been presented with new problems. The problems never go away. The world never gets better, so to speak, if you're not living in the now and appreciating where you're at right now, and that it's a journey that doesn't end and until your last day on earth.
Hey there, entrepreneurs and business owners. Are you feeling stuck with marketing strategies that just aren't delivering? Struggling to attract the right customers or boost your sales? Imagine turning those challenges into triumphs with a proven roadmap tailored just for you. Introducing Marketing Built by Love, the game-changing book by award-winning expert Daniel Bussius. Marketing Built by Love is designed to tackle your biggest business pains head-on, whether you're battling low visibility, weak customer loyalty, or stagnant growth. This book provides actionable solutions that drive real results. Here's how it can transform your business. Boost your revenue. Implement strategies that convert leads into loyal customers. Strengthen customer relationships. Create meaningful connections that keep your clients coming back. Streamline your marketing efforts. Save time and money with effective, easy-to-follow systems. Don't let marketing woes hold you back any longer. Take control and watch your business thrive. Grab your copy of Marketing Built by Love today in stores at Barnes & Noble, or order online at Amazon or wherever you buy quality books. Transform your marketing. Solve your business problems. Achieve the success you deserve with Marketing Built by Love. Available now.
That's right. And Daniel, to that point, when I think about the energy we show up with, right? So raising money for a startup. So I've been raising money for years for, my last startup, this startup. There's an energy around it, and investors pick up on that energy. So when you're in that desperate energy, you might do the perfect pitch, but they pick up like something's a little weird going on with this person. And that it's I've been in situations and party to situations where there's less than whatever amount of runway or whatever the case is, and it's always come together when people are aligned and they're in a higher vibrational energy. And I know some people listening is like, oh, that's kind of airy fairy stuff. It's not. When you think about who you do business with and you enjoy doing business with, that's saying it's people you like, know, and trust, and that hasn't changed. It's irrefutable. Right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Once you start putting results on the board and you're that person who's a third, fourth time founder and you scale companies to 9 figures and, so forth, then you become a known commodity, and, you can get by with being a jerk because, people just invest because they know you're going to win. But up until then, it ultimately comes down to that whatever it is we're putting out there, people feel it. And that's why we have to be grounded in knowing that if we're out of alignment, things will be much harder than they need to be.
You've founded and built multiple companies. What's the one thing? I mean, you've seen it because you're also a mentor, you're an author, and I want to talk about your books as well. But if there's one or two things that you can put your finger on and say, this is a pivotal point, or this is a trait where I see where people scale and succeed and excel versus founders and entrepreneurs who don't. I know that's a broad question, but is there a trend or something you see in that DNA versus people who just kind of exist?
Yeah, it's interesting. And let's look at Zuckerberg. because I was listening to his, and I highly recommend everyone listen to his interview on Acquired. Is fascinating. So when he started Facebook, he thought of it like a project. And a lot of people in tech build stuff and they kind of think of it like a project, not a business. And that's what he decided. It was like, is this, a project? So they moved to Silicon Valley and they're working on this fun, quote unquote, project. And then they reached this point, they're like, this could be a business. And they start to look at how they built this business. And I'm going to start with software since I have experience building different AI software, that they started building software and looking at it like, okay, we're not afraid to put something out there that is ugly, but what we're going to do is we're going to survey people, find out what they want. We're going to put it out there, a feature, even if it's not pretty, and then we're going to refine it. We're going to pull it back and we're going to put it out there again. And that's even how I'm building my new company and my software. And that would be one of my first things is when I see people who are willing to get feedback, Daniel, from potential customers and not be afraid and to be able to come back and go, okay, because you and I sat on a board together and right, that can be a problem when a company is not willing to get feedback from the end users and you've got a group of people sitting in a room going, this is cool, let's build this. And that's great. You code in Python, you code it, Flutter, like all these different types of things and whatever, but the average user doesn't know how to use it. And I could point to some different softwares that have been created like that and they're not user friendly. So I would say the first thing is don't be afraid to get that feedback. And it takes a really strong person without an ego. Wayne Dyer always said ego stands for edging God out, that to be able to put something out there, get the feedback, refine it and keep going. So I see companies that fail are the ones that don't listen. And they're so married to their product that they don't actually hear what the potential users and the current users are saying.
That's
wedded to the
profound.
product as opposed to wedded to the problem that their customers have.
Exactly, Peter. Yes, so well said. Mm-hmm.
As an author myself, I've written one book and it took me, 3-4 years to even contemplate writing another book. You've not only written one book, you've written a total of 7. You've had incredible success. You've had opportunities to co-author books with profound people. And I don't want to steal your thunder, so I want to have you talk a little bit about that. But what was the first book and why? Like, what sparked or ignited that flame for you to go down that path and then consequently write 6 more?
It goes back to, being a prover, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet this is about being a prover.
It's about being a prover, right? So you're like, oh, okay, what else could I do? And, how else can I make myself feel important? The first book I wrote, The Have It All Women, I was very ensconced in this whole like speaker, personal development world and, and inspiring solopreneurs. And, people kept saying, you need to have a book. And I was like, well, what am I going to write about? And because I was a prover, right? And, I'm married and, I have like this life and I've made this money. I was like, okay, I'm going to write about having it all, but not from the vantage point of this is what having it all looks like. But the theme of the book was your own definition. And I created this concept called the life pyramid, which was essentially the base of your pyramid is health, faith, and love. And then, whatever you build, if you build, the Bible says, build your house on the rock, not the sand, right? So building your foundation very solidly. And that's why I did it. And it's funny you mentioned books because I haven't written a book in a very long time. And I've been kind of like working on this side project of a fiction book. And for 6 years, I went back and forth from Cambodia and I rescued girls from sex trafficking. And so this book is really to shine light on the trafficking industry and the dark web and, fictionalized. And so I haven't put out a book in a very long time. And it goes back to what I said earlier, because those rackets no longer exist. Daniel, there's certain things in my life where I'm like, it's like relearning how to walk. I have to do something from this new place without those rackets, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Right. Like I stopped doing my show after my dad died, and a lot shifted because that was facing that relationship and not just grieving, but relationships often with children and parents are very complicated. And there were lots of things that I was unpacking, and I couldn't even do my show from the same place. I couldn't do anything from the same place. So there's a lot of things right now in my life that I look back and say, well, would Susan, my oldest daughter, Avery, calls it Susan 8.0 with the current iteration. Would Susan 8.0 write that same book? Heck no. No, I wouldn't. So, I think a lot of people write books for the wrong reasons. And I think that, if you're writing it just, to fuel your ego and things, power to you. And I have friends that have done that and become very successful. But once you reach a certain level of consciousness, it's going to be really hard to write anything that isn't pure service. And I'll just tell a quick story. So when I met Wayne Dyer, I was in Maui, and Wayne and I both loved Bikram yoga, and I still go to hot yoga often. And he called me and he said, Susan, guess what I did today? And I was like, what did you do, Wayne? He said, I took $20,000 and I went down to the beach in cash and I just started giving it away to people. And even Wayne, toward the end of his life, he had cancer. He didn't want to do chemotherapy. His consciousness was so evolved. And I remember being with him and Ram Dass in Maui. And if anyone knows who Ram Dass is,
wow.
It was crazy. And
amazing.
And I'm staring into Ram Dass's eyes because it's all I wanted to do, because I wanted to feel what pure, unfiltered love with no rackets felt like. And so I'm with Wayne, I'm with Ram Dass, and Wayne just toward the end of his life and his career, he couldn't do things from the same place, because when he wrote The Erroneous Zones, it was really, I'm Dr. Wayne Dyer and ego. And then as he kept evolving in consciousness, his consciousness exceeded what his body's capability was. The same thing with Ram Dass. And so before he left, he just started giving stuff away because he was like, he couldn't do things from the same place anymore.
Wow.
Amazing.
You've had, I feel guilty now changing subjects to talk about your tech startup, but I think there's a segue there that makes sense because if you allow me to go out of order, I want to talk about the current one, the pause. At your point in life, and by the way, I want to sidebar to say that I personally believe the Lord doesn't hand you challenges that he doesn't know that you can't take. And so, the challenges you have in your personal life, building a new company, your father passing, I kind of feel like for you, and who am I, but I feel like for you, this is the Lord saying, I want you to enter a new chapter. There's a rebirth here. There's a shedding of the old, and I want you to do more work. I want you to do more good. And I guess my question is, do you feel that way for the pause.ai, which is your newest venture?
Almost definitely. And it kind of begins with, before everyone started using ChatGPT, generative AI was kind of floating out there. AI used to be something more inaccessible to everyday people. It was just reserved for large enterprises because deployment was expensive. It's still expensive to a certain extent. But I started really working at the bleeding edge of AI in 2018. And then before I went back to school and went to MIT, but Gen AI was kind of floating out there. And Daniel, I started to really think about like, wow, what if we could take all the words of Jesus and put them in an AI, right? And this is before ChatGPT, again, just to emphasize, like, this is where my mind was going. I started calling friends who were in tech and Christians. I'm like, has anyone done this yet? Like, how would we even do this? Now it, like, I could do it in like 5 seconds, but like this was, 3-4 years ago. And then I started to think about what happens when AI tools become accessible, and that what I've always said for the last 7 years is good people build good technology, bad people build bad technology. And there are some very scary uses of AI, and there will be scary uses of AI, even scarier. I just hosted a forum on quantum computing and what's going on there. But I started to really think about how do we infuse generative AI and then an AI agent with a higher consciousness and a more loving, compassionate consciousness. And so with when I decided to start this company, Harmony, who is trademarked as our AI, and she is created to be highly conscious. She is created to be highly compassionate. So for women who are 30 plus going through hormonal changes, she's there 24/7. And she does everything from, it's the middle of the night and you can't sleep and you need a companion, or you're really struggling, you're going through a hardship with a relationship, or you need an eating plan. She's programmed to do all of that. And so that's what we started with. And then the funny thing is, we surveyed, and again, I built software like Zuckerberg, and we surveyed, Daniel, this group, and you and I come out of digital marketing. So of course we have this private Facebook group, and, I survey in there. There are people who don't have the app yet, which is fine because I want to know. And the number one thing they wanted was meditations.
Wow.
And I'm like, but we just built this Gen AI and you want meditations. Okay. All right, cool. So I start to record these meditations because in the past I've recorded many meditations. I've done group meditations. I've done all this stuff. And so my voice in these meditations is now in the app. And it's so funny because as I'm going through the work, I kind of feel like the app is an expression of my evolution and so forth. So you've got this compassion, this mothering side in Harmony, and then you've got these meditations, and we have other coaches that do them too. But it's just so interesting how that level of consciousness is being infused into AI, like the AI that I built myself. That's the Christian Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah.
So I had to build this. It was really a calling, and there's a whole story around that calling, but I had to do it. It is my life's work. So yeah,
I love that. You're helping to change the lives of women that are going through profound times. I promised my wife I wouldn't bring her up in our podcast. She was like, don't you dare. But I was like, maybe you should download the app and check it out. I mean, Susan's an incredible woman. So if you're listening out there, for any women, I think should absolutely download it. And that's in iTunes and Google Play, like all the standard places where you download apps.
Yeah.
If I can, I kind of want to put you in the hot seat for a second. There's a lot of hubbub about AI. AI is coming to take over the world. AI is going to disrupt industries. You're obviously at the forefront. You had your former company, I think, that you still own, but you're exiting, which is Radius AI. You've got this new one, the Pause.ai. You've been at the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of it for more than 2 decades. So where are there going to be industries that you think are going to be disrupted the most? And I dare say obsolete, but maybe there's industries that are not going to be obsolete. They're just going to transform. So what's your lens look like on that?
So I'm going to tell a story because Les Brown always says, don't make a point without telling a story.
I love
and
that.
Don't tell a story without making a point. So I'll tell you all the story. I am in San Francisco and it is late 2018. I'm with, at that time, Abe Othman, top 30 under 30, amazing, brilliant, beautiful human, brilliant in AI, PhD. And I say to Abe, how far away are we from artificial general intelligence? And he's like, yeah, maybe 10, 15 years. And I say, how far are we away from artificial super intelligence? He's like, 50 years. Abe's kind of looking at me, Abe, if you ever hear this, love you to pieces and respect you so much. He's kind of looking at me like, what do you even know, right, about AI? Because I haven't written code since 1992. And it's interesting because the compute power, and I've done a lot of work in the past with NVIDIA, how their chips have improved, even AMD and, Intel and all the folks where AI runs. And the compute power accelerated so quickly that the models accelerated faster. So Elon comes out last year. He's like, we're 18 months away from AGI. Now, we very well could be. And so, for people listening and you don't know what I'm talking about, if you've ever seen the movie Ironman, Jarvis is an AGI. When Jarvis evolves into, what does he evolve into? The
Vision.
name Vision. Yes, that is an artificial super intelligence. So that is when AI, we reach the singularity, AI surpasses human capability, and then artificial super intelligence can create more computers, robots, AIs. So I will be very blunt because I am not going to sugarcoat this, because I speak on this topic all the time. There is a variable that we don't know, and that is quantum computing. I just hosted a sit down with a VC in the quantum computing world who's investing in quantum compute. Once we have quantum compute, we can do models and things, but that the ability of those AI models to train and to be brought to life is going to be at a level we haven't yet seen. Now, there are quantum computers. Even here in Phoenix, we are becoming the semiconductor capital of the United States. Quantum compute has some specific requirements. One of the things with Arizona, we don't really have natural disasters. Those computers require a lot of stability. Even cooling is improving, like without getting super nerdy. So we don't know what quantum compute is going to do. So it'd be very difficult for me to estimate which industries are going to be disrupted the most. But I will tell you what we're already seeing that is a little more closer to home. So one is influencers. Last year, Mango, the Spanish brand, they did their whole spring campaign. It looks realistic with AI generated models. And so that is already happening. The film industry, we are already seeing it. Journalism, we are already seeing it. Barnes and Noble just announced they're opening 60 new stores because young people, especially for my daughter's generation, Gen Alpha, they're reading like crazy. But even authors who are, have these contracts where they have to produce, multiple books over multiple years. Of course, they're using AI tools to be able to do that. I was asked to go to Europe and train a group of 70 elite European sales leaders. And I used a tool called Gamma. And I have an AI that I built that has my CV, samples of my writing. And I took the key points that I wanted. I built out the training, and then I put the points into Gamma, and within 25 seconds it did a 50 slide deck show. So we're all using these tools. Marketing, Daniel, where you and I came out of, so disrupted. We're already seeing it. So there's some things that are on the horizon. So, 2 years ago, we're all talking about Gen AI. I spoke at CES this year on agentic AI. Those are AI agents doing very specific things. And then robotics. So Elon is launching robots, his Optimus robots. And those he wants to make accessible, so they'll be in everyone's home. The starting price he's talking about is like somewhere around $50,000. So I'm not saying that's for, everyone, but, it's the price of a car. And Elon is collecting a lot of data. A significant amount of data. He just absorbed X into XAI, and with Sam Altman saying that he's going to start a social media company. Now you can get sentiment analysis. So here's the thing I will say very bluntly for everyone. There's opportunities in everything. So the opportunity is, number one, you can invest in these technologies, and I do. Full disclosure. And then number two, you can be a part of companies that are building this technology. Or number three, you can take a look at and say, how do I reskill myself so that I am not left behind if I am in an industry that I'm already seeing AI play a big part in? So there are some bright spots. Healthcare is a big one that I'm very involved in. My startup was one of only 10 in the world to be accepted into the Mayo Clinic MedTech Accelerator. So healthcare is my focus because that is an area we can use AI for good. But I would just say, I'm not trying to scare anyone, Daniel,
Yeah.
but people need to be very, very aware. Yeah.
Can I, for a moment, I'm going to go completely left field. Like, this is completely like, I don't even know if I should bring it up because it's way off topic, but I feel compelled to say it. I feel like, I don't know if it's 5 years from now, I don't know if it's 10 years from now, but I feel like there's going to come a point in time where some people that maybe are lost or whatever, I feel like a new religion will start, and that God will be an AI, and they will worship that. That's way, I don't know, maybe that's too far out for people, but have you
I have
contemplated that
thoughts
at
on
all?
that. I have thoughts on that. Since we're going way in left field, I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to talk about space for a minute.
Okay.
So, one of my friends is working on land contracts for Mars.
Wow.
There is another project that's going on which really decides which humans qualify to go populate Mars. And so in China, they use a social credit score that, they're monitoring people through computer vision, through transactions, and so forth. We do the same thing with our algorithms on LinkedIn and Instagram. So we shouldn't think we're any better than anyone else, but there are algorithms being built to literally decide like who gets to go live on Mars, populate it. And what I firmly believe is, one of the things that will save us is actually God. Right. And that's why, even in my, I read the Bible twice a day, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. I love God so much, and I wouldn't be the person I am without him. But that's why I put in that GPT I built, that's why it feeds me back scripture to anchor in. Right. And did you know, this really warmed my heart, in the United States in Gen Z, there a higher percentage of Gen Z are believe in God than millennials. And so we're actually going in a different direction generationally, which is beautiful to see this whole, the next chapter. But I think there will be, what I think is, during the pandemic, there was an acceleration of virtual reality technology, blockchain, virtual worlds. Snoop Dogg was, selling his NFTs, and people think, oh, that was just a trend. Actually, it's not a trend. Right now, there are a bunch of tech workers that are leaving Silicon Valley, and they're going to Austin to work on blockchain projects, their cryptocurrency, and so forth. So don't think that stuff is over. I think what will happen, Daniel, is a lot of people can't function and cope, and they will start living like Ready Player One. They will start living more in virtual worlds than in real worlds, because we're already seeing it in the United States. There are 7 million young men in their 18 to 35 who still live at home. They're struggling, and a virtual world that is more enticing, when they can be whatever they want, experience whatever they want. I think that's what we're going to see, in my humble opinion. And I would just say, to everyone out there, again, you want to remain positive, but you also want to remain vigilant, because, for those who are believers, we will say the enemy comes like a thief in the night. Right. And these technologies that are meant to help us can ultimately cost more divisiveness as well, if not created by the right people with the right intent, doing the right things.
Speaking of that,
Daniel,
yeah.
I was
Go
just going
ahead.
to say, this is definitely one of those conversations which could go on for hours, but we do
I
need to
know.
be respectful of both our listener and Susan's time.
Yeah. That's why I was going to say, reflecting on your journey, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave to, the community of the world, as well as your family?
Great question.
That's a great question. So one of the things I've, been thinking about a lot is, especially, being in my 50s, I've already lost some really close friends, losing my parents. When my dad died, I built an AI of him that he did the keynote at his funeral. It was awesome, and beautiful. And my dad had 5 sisters, and so he never got the last word. So he got to make an appearance, and it was amazing. My legacy is really the following: is creating an environment of love, of healing, possibility, and win-win for whomever I am close with, whoever I share time with. And I hope that I have some small part in guiding AI right now where it's needed. And there are more people who are coming from the right place that are very much needed at this table, because again, with quantum compute, we really don't know what's going to happen. And so if something keeps me up at night and wakes me up in the morning, it's how do I make an impact right now in terms of building something, creating something that is going to comfort, help, and support millions of women around the planet who are someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's auntie, someone's grandma. And how do I do that? Because if I can help to do that, and Mark Devine, Navy SEAL, New York Times best-selling author, is a friend of mine, and Mark and I often ask this question: what would humanity look like if it was just the elevated in consciousness just a little more? Would we have wars? Would we have this vitriol? And the answer is no. So that's what I feel my legacy is. And yeah, it's a very interesting time to be alive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, it's a privilege to be connected to you and to have spent this time with you, Susan, in conversation. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing some of who you are with our listener.
I know our listeners probably wondering, where can I find Susan? So you have books, you've got an app, you've got, online presence. So where do we want to direct them if they're listening and they want more Susan Sly?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, there's a lot of me out there, but I would say, the best place, just go to susansly.com. It's the repo, as we would say in tech, for, all of my social media links, what I do, the companies I'm invested in, where, I write and create and talk. And, of course, I'm on all the social media channels, and happy to connect. And I would just, Peter and Daniel, it's just been such a blessing and a gift to be here. And if this has touched anyone listening, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for building more love in the world.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Built by Love podcast. If you found the conversation inspiring or helpful in any way, then head to builtbylove.com/podcast and make sure you're subscribed to our email list. Please also take a few minutes to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with a friend that you think it might help. Each review helps us to spread the message of love to more people. See you next time on the Built by Love podcast.